Welcome back to Briggs on Books, our international talk show where we talk to authors from all over the world. Are you looking for the next book to put in your pile and your stack? Check this out, Elephant Safari by Peter Riva. By the way, before Peter even comes on the show, I'm going to tell you he's probably the most interesting guest we've ever had. Let me see if I can find him and click him in here. There he is. Welcome, Peter.
Hey, hello, Mike. How are
Hate to
you?
hate to put you on the spot. The most interesting guest we've ever had. Um,
Wow.
and by the way, just before we talk about anything, here's Peter's latest book, Elephant Safari. But tell us first a little bit about your life.
I was born in Manhattan in 1950, and I grew up in that wonderful decade in Manhattan. And then I went to boarding school in Switzerland and got to know 60 some odd other nationalities in the foreign boarding school. And it made me sort of a citizen of the world more than anything else. I love living in America, but I've traveled pretty extensively all my life. I've produced television and um, special features and sometimes movies. I spent a lot of time in Africa, first time when I was 16,
Mm.
and been going back, except for this decade, fairly reasonably often. When I first came to where I live now in southwest New Mexico, it so reminded me of the Ngong Hills in East Africa that I fell in love with it here, and that's where we planted.
Wow. Something about the space program, too?
Yeah, in the early 80s, I d did a program with the help of Arthur C. Clarke and Ansel Adams, a photographer. I convinced Teddy Kennedy to get NASA to let me have access to the frozen flight footage, images taken by the astronauts in space, and we found 175,000 images that had never been shown before.
Mm.
And we did a book called Sightseeing a Space Panorama. We did exhibits at the Air and Space Museum. In fact, as an art exhibit, it is the most publicly seen art exhibit
Mm.
ever because it's still touring since 1985. It's really quite remarkable when you see the original images. You know, the thing that was really interesting about it is we discovered that the cover of Life magazine of the first images from the moon was a sixth generation dupe, and it was so fuzzy
Ah.
that you couldn't tell anything. When we saw the original flight footage, you could see the stitching on the uniforms from 500
Ah.
yards away because there's no air. And in fact, people who say, well, we never went to the moon and all that,
Ah.
I had photographs that proved
Yeah.
if there's no air, there's no distortion. You could see every grain of
Amazing.
sand in these photographs. It's absolutely astounding.
Now, did you say you met Ansel Adams?
Yeah, I was sitting with Ansel and he was explaining photography to me
Uh-huh.
and form and emotion. And I said to him, well, you know, my great passion is space and stuff. And I see the images coming back from space and they're technically fascinating, but emotionally devoid. And I don't think astronauts are like that because I've heard them talk with passion
Hmm.
about their experience. And he said, you know, that's a good question. Let's find out. And indeed, we found out that NASA only ever printed from a shooting script. And once you took the picture they wanted of the guy standing next to the
Yeah.
flag on the moon, they never printed any of the others. And there
Mm.
was maybe 60 other images on the same reel. So that's what we unfroze from
Amazing.
Building 2 down at JSC. And um, Barbara Hitchcock, a wonderful lady, art curator for the Polaroid Land Corporation, she did the art curation, and we selected 2,000 images that we thought had emotional impact, narrowed that down to the 200 or so for the book and 140 for the exhibit.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And
Those.
it's changed NASA completely. Now
Yeah.
all the images that come from space are available to the
Yeah.
public, and they're
Yes.
digitizing them now, which I'm quite proud of because when you see the human experience, the form and emotion in those photographs, it conveys the human experience and gets people more involved and
Yeah.
more interested in space exploration.
Yeah. Now, besides all that, that's a full life right there. But besides all that, you're an author, and
I am. That's how I sort of rest it, you know, rest the gray cells from work. I enjoy sitting, writing, typing, and working my way into novels. I do science fiction novels as well as novels taken from my own experiences in East Africa and in Europe. And I really it's very hedonistic and self-serving, to be honest with you, but I enjoy it a lot.
Today, I think we're talking about a series of books. The first
Yeah.
one is pictured here, Tribal Rumble. Tell us about this book or the series, whatever you want to tell us about.
Well, there was a back in the early 80s, I was staying with Peter Beard, my client at Hog Ranch, and I met a fellow who was a very famous safari guide called Mbuno, and Mbuno Waleangulu is his full name. And Mbuno and I used to go walking across the Masai Plain 8 or 10 miles, past all the animals and into the Ngong Hills in Masai land. And I really loved spending time with him one on one. And he told me the stories of his father, his tribe, and how they can speak to the elephant in a way that most people don't understand, and how they are really fascinating as a tribe. The Walangulu tribe were the principal elephant hunters of East Africa. And of course, everybody goes, oh, no, they were killing elephants. Well, they were part of the solution, not part of the problem, because they would hunt with bow and arrow. And if you think about going to hunt elephant with a bow and arrow, you're not going to get close to anything young or small. It's the old male and the old female who are sterile who come out and challenge you. So if they did manage to kill one of those, the entire tribe showed up and nothing was wasted. Not a piece of hair, not hide, bones, nothing was ever wasted. And the elephants would watch them butchering the carcass,
Mm.
and there was no animosity. It was a normal function of nature. It's like a lion takes down a wildebeest. The rest of the wildebeest hang around saying, okay, he's busy eating, we'll just continue feeding ourselves. And they were part of the solution. But of course, in order to protect the elephant from poachers, they had to classify anybody hunting elephant as illegal. So the Walangulu became outlaws, and a lot of the tribe turned to become the scouts for the poachers.
Mm.
And of course, who knows where the elephants are better than the elephant hunting tribe? And Mbuno went the other way, of course. He was a safari guide for Bill Holden, for Hemingway, and all that crew. And he was in his 70s, 80s when I first met him, and he's passed away. And so when I was feeling like putting down some of the true experiences I had in East Africa in the first book, I really made it about Mbuno and one of the rescues he made of an elephant herd. And that's what the book is about, and how he and um, an ex-Brit, Kenyan now national, and he um, set about rescuing an elephant herd against all the odds, all the political odds as well, because there's a lot of money involved in elephant. In fact, every book I write has Mbuno in it because he is the most interesting and most capable person that you could possibly imagine.
Mm. Amazing. Um, now I don't want to run out of time before we get to all these. Here's the most recent book, Elephant Safari. Uh,
Yeah, well, the heroes of that book is Pero Baltazar, who's a television documentary director and producer, and they've had a few sort of tough adventures together, and so he and Mbuno decide they're going to do a walking safari with Nancy Brightman, who was their cameraman on their last outing, kidnapped on safari. So now they're in northern Kenya, leaving Lake Turkana, going north along the Omo River, starting really basically from the birthplace of man and walking along the Omo River, following an elephant herd on its natural migration and just enjoying wildlife and being in the wild on foot. You know, a foot safari means that you experience the odors, the smells, the dust, the insects, the nothing goes by quickly. You know, a lot of people go on safari and they sit in vehicles and everything goes by really quick and they say, oh, I think I saw it. No, if you're on foot, you see it. And so that's what they wanted. They want to reconnect with the real Africa. And unfortunately, they stumble upon a poaching operation, which Mbuno takes care of rather quickly. And then they find it's part of a much larger operation. And when Para Baltazar, who's a producer, starts to do the numbers in his head, he suddenly realizes that over a 10-year period, $20 billion of ivory has been taken out of Ethiopia.
wow.
And that $20 billion all goes through the hands of terrorists, particularly the Al-Shabaab terrorists. and they operate out of Somalia and the refugee camps along the border with Somalia.
Hmm.
And there's corruption and terrorism involved, and the Iranians are involved, and the really some terrible people in the Chinese gangs. And Pero's feeling, because he has contacts within the CIA and the State Department, and they're sort of annoyed at him sticking his nose into it, but he agrees to sort of proceed to find out who these people are and what they're doing. And Mbuno's motive is to just exterminate them because he considers anybody butchering elephants are vermin. So he has no moral equivalency here. He just wants to exterminate them. But he goes along, and I won't spoil the whole story, but it's really about uncovering the corruption and the links and everything else which they solve, and in their inimitable fashion because Mbuno is so capable. And Pero is rather handy himself. He's got capabilities. He relies on Mbuno for guidance and his own reluctant bravery. And so the two of them thwart the terrorist cells once again.
And now I guess that we're going to get a feel for what you experienced when you were in Africa.
Yeah, it's all about connecting with the land. That's why I now live in southwest New Mexico. The edge of my property here abuts the Gila Wilderness, which is 3.5 million acres, and I have bear, coyote, wolf, rattlesnakes. 1/3 of all the bird species in North America come through here, elk, deer, and so on. And you just know that this is Apache territory, and I'm reconnecting with the land here. When you're in Africa, that's what you should do too. You should connect with the land and know what it's really like. People don't understand the importance of elephant in Africa. It's not just because they're majestic, wonderful creatures.
Yeah.
Elephants really made Africa. They eat something here, the seeds they're dropped there, and the pathways and the intelligence of the elephant on where to migrate, when to migrate. All the other animals follow the elephant.
Yeah.
They do depend on the elephant's intelligence and guidance for how to proceed. Elephants will tell you if there's a lightning strike, a bushfire, hours before you would know it's anywhere around. And all the animals know that. So part of the problem of the terrible slaughter of elephants, particularly in East Africa, is it breaks apart the natural balance of nature. And that's going to take a while to recapture. You know, Teddy Roosevelt, at the end of the ivory trade, beginning of the 20th century, he and a bunch of hunters went to Africa and shot all the old male and female sterile elephants on purpose to breed up the herds. And there were less elephants in 1912 than there are today. Most people don't know that.
Peter, we've gone way over time. They're giving me the signal, but you're too fascinating to let you go that quickly. Should we read these books in order?
Yeah, the first book is Tribal Rumble, then there's Murder on Safari, and then there's the Berlin Package, then there's Kidnapped on Safari, and finally Elephant Safari.
Elephant Safari. It's amazing, and I just feel like we're going to get a real feel for Africa and by reading these books. So I appreciate you coming on the show. I just want to give you a minute. Any last thoughts about the books or anything you want to talk about in the world?
Well, I really want people to understand that the world is a wonderful place, and that my books, I try and convey the feeling of being there and sharing Africa. A lot of little details, you know, between the fruit that's on the tree and the way insects become food for eagles. There's a lot of little details in the books that I think people enjoy.
That is wonderful. And I guess we get the books in all the usual places?
Yep, they're available everywhere, ebooks and paperbacks and Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all the other platforms.
By the way, Peter, I went to your website right before this interview. Almost made me late because I got really sucked into the website. It's on the screen, peterriva.com. Best website ever, by the way. Best name. I've already got it memorized, peterriva.com. And also we have your Instagram there, so I encourage our viewers, go buy these books. These are fascinating. Thank you, Peter. I want to have you back again and again on the show.
Anytime, Mike.
All righty. And for our viewers, don't go anywhere because we'll be back with another author right after this.